Shadows in the 2:30 a.m. hours.
Westwood was a small college town, one that went to sleep early and woke up late. But for me, the nights were the realm of studying and a kingdom of false quiet. My small apartment in the arcade complex was a stone's throw from the downtown clamor, where the bar lights glittered with the promise of oblivion. On that particular night, the clock had ticked past 2:30 a.m. The deep chill of midnight had given way to a slight humidity, and the scent of jasmine mixed with faint cigarette smoke. I sat on the cement steps of the front porch, leaning against a column, my thick quantum physics textbook open on my lap. I wasn't so much reading as escaping the blue glow of my screen. The apartment across from mine on the ground floor was occupied by a girl whose name I never learned. I'd see her sometimes in a rush, dark, heavy hair and sharp, beautiful features. She was like a quiet piece of furniture in the complex's landscape. At that moment, I heard the click of her heels on the broken sidewalk. She was home. Her steps were slightly unsteady, a gentle sway that portrayed a long night of drinks mixed with laughter. She reached her door, looking exhausted. She put the key in the lock, and with some difficulty, managed to push the door open and step inside. The door had barely closed when I heard a single knock. Quiet and formal. My fingers paused mid-page. At 2:37 a.m., no one knocks on a girl's door unless it's an emergency. I stood up immediately. The girl opened the door, a half-inch crack, and a man I had never seen in the complex's vicinity appeared. He wore a light jacket and seemed excessively neat. His appearance was abrupt, as if he had materialized from the shadow of the dead maple tree on the corner. The man smiled slowly, an artificial smile, with the corners of his mouth stretched tight as if he were wearing a mask. He introduced himself in a low, polite voice, using a generic name I couldn't clearly catch, but his tone carried a strange blend of possession and unnatural calm. I could sense the girl's tension. She was trying to be polite, attempting to convince him the hour was too late. The conversation dragged on. 10 minutes passed, each second weighing like a ton of ice. The city's state of false quiet had shattered. Now a palpable tension hung around us. It was his movements that set off the loudest alarm bell in my head. He spoke slowly, and with every sentence, he tried to advance a very small step toward the threshold, attempting to bridge the distance between them. Even more chilling was his strange, repetitive action. He would slowly reach out, touch the top of her head, and stroke a lock of her hair, as if adjusting her style or checking its texture. He did this at least 3 times during the conversation, trying to cross the boundary of her personal space in the most unsettling and invasive way.
I realized the girl was psychologically trapped. She didn't know how to end the conversation without appearing rude or afraid, while the man was savoring the quiet power he was exerting. I had to intervene without engaging him directly, fearing an immediate confrontation. I returned my seat and with a deliberate, exaggerated movement, slammed my textbook loudly onto the concrete steps. This was followed by a loud, intentional cough. Then I began to turn the pages of the book harshly, making sure the sound of the paper almost ripping could be heard in the stillness of the night. I was sending a clear message. I am here. I am watching. The man stopped talking. He slowly turned toward my location. His gaze in the dark was steady and indifferent, but I sensed his plan collapsing. There was now an uncalculated element in his solitary game. He and the girl were no longer alone in this forced dance. As soon as he realized my presence was persistent and obvious, his expression shifted. His smile vanished, revealing a blank, ordinary face. Then, with the same sudden mystery with which he had appeared, he retreated into the darkness surrounding the building. He didn't run. He walked calmly, as if dissolving into the shadow. In an instant, he was gone.
After a minute of heavy silence, the girl left her apartment and walked toward me, trembling slightly. "Oh my God, thank you. That was so weird, so completely sickening." We relayed the details to the police, who took the matter seriously,
given the bizarre timing and the man's actions. A few days later, the girl and I sat with a sketch artist, working for hours dissecting the features of that ordinary yet terrifying face. The nose, the corners of the mouth, his posture. When the sketch was released to the public, a sketch that captured the unsettling accuracy of the girl's description of his hand stroking her hair, the police departments were flooded with calls. The shocking revelation came. The man was not just a strange creep, he was an active serial rapist operating in the campus area. His usual method was to follow lone girls home from bars, then pretend to be a taxi driver offering them a safe ride. He would then drive them to isolated areas. My poor neighbor was not the target of a late-night chat. She was incredibly lucky that she lived so close to the downtown bars. It made the taxi trap unnecessary. When he arrived at her doorstep, he was attempting his plan B, forcing her to fully open the door or subtly intrude into her apartment. However, the sound of the falling book, the presence of the witness, disrupted his plan. The moment he vanished, he was fleeing not from confrontation, but from the loss of anonymity and numerical advantage. That night, which was supposed to be nothing more than dull study hours, was the night that proved true evil doesn't just lurk in the darkness. It disguises itself behind a polite smile and a quiet knock on the door at 2:30 a.m.
The awakening of Westwood. The news of the taxi stalker's arrest wasn't just a fleeting news story in Westwood, it was a social earthquake. The quiet of the college town, once seen as a guarantee of safety, turned into a terrifying illusion. Suddenly, every story of a female student returning home late or walking alone after midnight carried a new weight of fear. The man who had feigned excessive politeness and calm, who was revealed to be an expert in tailing his victims from inside bars, observing their drink choices, and calculating their steps home, had committed several crimes that couldn't be linked until the composite sketch emerged. That sketch, born from a passing observation on a study night, gave authorities the golden thread to connect a chain of horror. The burden of heroism and shock. For both me and my neighbor, our lives changed that night, not just because of what happened, but because of what could have happened. My neighbor, whose name I finally learned was Sarah, now lived under the dual weight of gratitude and shock. Her story was magnified in the local media as the young woman who survived thanks to a vigilant neighbor. But she was in a fragile state. She would recall the details of his chilling movements, especially those cold touches on her hair, and begin to tremble. She could no longer return to her ground floor apartment with ease. Every dim light, every shadow moving past her window brought her back to those 10 minutes when she was trapped at her doorstep. As for me, the nights of quiet study were gone. The textbook was no longer an aid to learning, but a shield or a noise-making tool. Every cigarette break on the porch was replaced by an unofficial guard duty. I felt a heavy responsibility resting on my shoulders as the witness. Every night, I reviewed the details of the scene in my mind, thanking the luck that kept me studying late on that specific evening. It wasn't heroism, it was vigilance imposed by instinct. But that vigilance robbed me of the simple comfort of nighttime security. Closure and the new awareness. Weeks later, when the perpetrator's identity was confirmed and he was convicted based on multiple pieces of evidence, the tension eased slightly. However, Westwood was never the same. Awareness campaigns were launched on campus, along with seminars on the culture of the witness and instinct as a defense mechanism. Cell phones were immediately taken out upon leaving the bars, girls started taking longer, better-lit routes, and friends began accompanying each other right up to their doors. That night taught us that security isn't something we acquired just by living in a quiet town. It is a continuous act of observation, intervention, and refusal of the false smiles that arrive at the oddest hours. For me and for Sarah, it was a painful yet saving conclusion, and an eternal memory of the importance of being the voice of the witness against the dark.